Hunters, welcome to the second Evasion Series video. This one is on the majestic lion of Monster Hunter. So for those of you new to this series, it's an informative guide on various monsters and about the tells and indicators that you need to know to recognize what attacks are coming your way, how to dodge them, and or which attacks can you counter. Understanding monster patterns has been and probably will be the best tool for any successful hunt. So in this video we're going to be talking about Teostra, a pretty well-known monster. For those of you who are returning hunters, you'll know him from previous games all the way back to Monster Hunter 2. For those of you new to Monster Hunter, he's probably one of the coolest fire monsters you'll ever fight in my opinion. His set is pretty nice and he has some decent fire resistance, but the most important materials you will get from him are the ones to craft Mastery Jewels or Master Touch Jewels. You need Teostra mains and some Fire Dragon scales, so you're going to be fighting him quite a few times in order to get these jewels, since a lot of Blade Master sets rely on this skill. So we'll go over some of the main attacks that you'll see when you hunt him and talk about the indicators for certain attacks and how to dodge or counter those attacks. As a reminder here, my videos are focused on Blade Master classes since Gunners greatly differ and I haven't played a whole lot of Gunner in Rise. Additionally, everyone's playstyle is different, so some of these experiences may differ for you, but these tips should help you get a better understanding of Teo to which you can then fit your playstyle to. And without further ado, let's jump on in. So starting off with the roars, as most monsters have, his is probably one of the quickest you'll experience in Monster Hunter Rise. He startles just a bit and then immediately gets up on his hind legs and lets out a roar. Now the roar initiates when his arms are just reaching peak height. So if your weapon has a short counter prep like bow, sword and shield or dual blades, when his arms leave the ground, that's when you can go ahead and begin your counter. If your weapon has a longer counter prep time, you're already too late if his arms are already in the air. So you gotta focus on that little startle at the start. The little shake that he does gives you about a half a second before the roar is coming, which is enough time for most longer counters like the insect glaive to prep. Now he does have a second level of roar. The first one is that normal one usually at the start of a hunt. When he does his first roar, he'll go into one of two modes, either fire or blast. The second roar is kind of like charging that state up. He amplifies those states even more. Either his flames or his blast sparkles, they will start to glow a little bit brighter just before he roars to fully charge himself up. So that's kind of the cue that you're looking for. But in all honesty, it's actually very quick and it's very hard to see. I still miss it half the time because, you're focused on attacking and then suddenly they just glow and he's roaring. So it's going to be very hard to notice. Got to pay attention to it. This is something that you'll generally get used to as you hunt him more and more. It depends on a lot of variables, the weapons that you're using, if you're using elements to tamper his states, if you're doing enough damage, if your teammates aren't doing enough damage. There's a couple of factors there that are going to affect when that second roar actually comes and when he charges himself even more. So once he roars, you'll have an idea of what state he's in as well, and that's going to carry on for all of the attacks we're going to talk about. If he's got sparks coming out of him, he's in blast mode. If he's got flames around his arms and mouth, he's in fire mode. Now most attacks for Teo are very similar, but depending on the state, the outcome of the attack action will differ, so we will go through both. Now just before we go through specific attacks, I want to mention two things. Number one, Teo has very forward directional attacks, so the worst place you can be is right in the middle in front of his face. Always be on the side of Teo. That's your goal throughout any hunt. You should work towards getting to the side of him, and if you're there, most of the time you'll be clear to engage him while he finishes attacks going in front of him. Number two, after most major attacks, he'll do sort of a head little rotate thing, kind of like stretching his neck after working hard or getting ready again. This is a great opening to do some damage whenever you want. He just sits there and stretches, so keep an eye out for this. It happens many times in a hunt and it's something that you should always be looking for. As you learn more about him, you'll get a sense of when he does this, which is usually after major attack combos. So moving on to his attacks, one of his most basic attacks is an arm swipe. At the end of the day, Teostra is a feline monster, so he has that classic cat swipe attack. He'll pull one of his arms back, which indicates to you which way the attack is going to come from, and usually it goes right across the entire front area of him and ends on the other side. Now the best way to dodge this attack is a simple roll backwards. You can also roll to the opposite side if you want, but you gotta go very far to the opposite side, otherwise he's going to hit you. The reason I also say to go to the opposite side is because if he's in blast mode, he will drop blast bombs on the same side of the arm that he used and it rotates across the front. So if you roll to the opposite side, you now have a chance to attack him. In this other example, you can see that I rolled the other way. Now this is inefficient because now I'm in the explosion radius, so I had to back up even more. I missed my chance to attack and I had to completely reset my positioning. So the way that you roll has always got to be directed away from the attacking arm. That way you have an opening to damage him. Now all blast bombs do stay on the field until Teo does one of two things. Number one, he'll bite down his teeth. If you've seen Naruto, just imagine like Asuma Sensei's fight with the Akatsuki where he blows up the smoke by clamping his teeth. Teo basically does that. The second way is that he'll pounce in the middle of the bombs. So if you see blast bombs, don't panic. You usually have a couple of seconds before he blows them up. Early on in a hunt, he'll usually just do one set of blast bombs and then blow them up. Later on, when he enrages or when he's getting close to exhaustion, he'll start putting 2 sets of blast bombs. That's basically Teo just trying to cope to get some more damage on you. Now once in a while, he'll do 2 arm swipes and he'll put bombs all over his face. You really just have to damage a different part of the body until it clears up. If he's in fire mode, he really doesn't have a follow-up attack to the arm swipes. But do note, if you don't have good fire resistance, being close to his arms in fire mode will actually damage and burn you over time. That's what makes Teostra one very spicy hot boy. Moving on here, let's talk about his fire/blast breath. Now this is one of the most common attacks that he'll do, and he actually has 2 versions for both blast and fire mode, a weak breath and a strong breath. If he's in blast mode, this attack will appear as a series of blast orbs that will curve in front of him. If he's in fire mode, he'll do a wave of fire right in front of his face. The stronger versions essentially amplify the area of the attacks and he doubles back, so he always starts from the left side, goes right, and then returns left. The blast orbs become much larger when they go left to right, and then he drops closer bombs to his face when he goes back right to left. The fire breath actually changes to a full horizontal laser beam like fire breath, extending a large distance in front of him. Now to notice this attack, he has a clear cue. If he's doing the weaker fire breath, he's going to tuck in his head to the side that he's going to start the breath from. That head tuck is the main indicator that you need to move to the opposite side to get to safety. The stronger fire breaths, he actually starts by leaping backwards and giving a little space between you and him in an attempt to damage you. He's going to make a larger sucking in air noise and he actually raises his left leg. Again, the leg and the tuck are your real indicators as to when you should prepare your counters. But again, the leap is also a very early indicator, so you can start closing that gap if you see that. The stronger attacks are always more predictable as well. They always start on the left side, proceed right, and then end up going back to the left. So because of that predictability, these are actually pretty easy to avoid. For the weak blast breath, just go to his head. The attack actually lands the orbs a little bit away from his head, so 99% of the time, you're actually safe if you're just at his head. Unless there's some sort of environmental object or some weird geometry, most of the time you're fine. Now for the weak fire, you want to get close to the sides of the heads. Generally speaking, it doesn't matter for the weaker attacks, just try to get to the side of the head, you don't want to be in the middle. For the stronger attacks, the ideal spot is to be on the right side of his head or his left. Now the main reason I say this is while there's no difference in the fire breath attack, the final blast bomb actually can hit you. So if you're on the left side of his head, be prepared to roll away just as he blows the bombs. So if you're on the right, you don't need to worry about this, you can keep attacking. And on top of that, after these strong attacks, he does his head rotation animation, so you have even more time to attack. The next set of attacks are what I call a circle of blast bombs. Now Teo will create this circle around him, it's kind of his way of clearing the area. There are 3 versions of this attack. The first is that the circle of bombs will actually land far away from his body and he'll stay on the ground. If he's on the ground, you're safe to close in and do some damage. He's just going to bite down and blow the bombs in a moment, you can get as much damage as you want. The second is if he wants to pounce on them. He'll actually leave the ring of blast bombs and fly into the air. That's your cue to get out immediately. Leave the circle because he's going to do damage as he lands in addition to everything blowing up. And if he's in blast mode as well, he's going to create an explosion on the ground. Now this move is counterable, but it's much more better suited for weapons that don't have a lot of movement like bow, charge blade, and dual blades. Now the third is quite uncommon. He'll make the same circle of bombs but much closer to his body. You don't have safe space in this one and your only option is to wait till they explode. However, if your weapon does have a counter ability, this is a great attack to counter since it's so close to him and he'll take a moment to reset after, so it's Pretty much any weapon that has a counter can take full advantage of this attack. Moving on here, let's talk about some of the small attacks that he mixes and matches to create combos. The first one is a running forward. This is a very simple attack. He just runs forward a couple steps, tries to clear up, and he'll try to like drop some bombs if he's in blast mode as he runs forward. This one has a very clear cue for you to take a look at. He'll start shaking his head just before running, and he'll bring all of his legs inwards, kind of like getting ready to bolt off. When he shakes his head, that's when his direction is locked, so you can just rotate or roll out of that direction and you should be safe. Very early on in hunts, he'll only just run and then end the combo and blow up the bombs behind him. Later on in a hunt, when he's more enraged or exhausted, he'll actually do more follow-up attacks. So if he's in blast mode, he'll try to do another attack to land more blast bombs before blowing them up. If he's in fire mode, he'll probably do a fire breath attack behind him. Now keep in mind, these do change. They are interchangeable attacks depending on the situation, his exhaustion level, and your positioning. So all in all, later on in a hunt, he will want to do something after running, so it's not really an opening for you and you should be prepared for a second attack. The next interchangeable attack is basically a flying and landing back. The simple attack that he does is that he'll just take off into the air forward, do a turn in the air, and come right back onto your position. The landing part of this attack is the damaging part, so nothing changes in fire mode but a simple hit and knockback. If he's in blast mode though, he will create an explosion on the ground, so you have to move out of the way, let him land his attack, and then jump right back in to get some damage. So as I mentioned, he likes to mix and match these attacks. So here's an example of him doing the running attack that we just talked about. Then he goes into the air and he comes right back down to blow up the blast bombs. A final interchangeable one is the tail swipe. Very quick attack. It's a 2-swipe attack, very quick and very easy to dodge. He'll kind of tilt his head and kind of look back and raise his butt up. That's your cue that he's getting ready for a tail swipe, and it usually only happens when you're behind him. If you can get under him, you're actually very safe and you can get some damage in. If you're too far away, your best chance is just to back up a little bit. Now in my opinion, it's not a very good attack to counter. It's a 2-hit attack which can hit you again. Even if you counter the first one, you're going to get hit by the second tail swipe. In addition to that, he also raises his tail pretty quickly after the attack, so you might even miss your counter. Then you're not prepared for the next attack that he's going to be turning around to do, so you're basically just a mess. So I would just use the tail swipe to kind of reposition in front of him and get ready for the next attack. Now moving on to the next attack, let's talk about my favorite attack. I call this one the Tokyo Drift attack. He starts out by raising the arm that he's going to rotate around. That's the side that you need to be worried about. He growls a little bit and then speed shimmies forward while Tokyo drifting on that side. So he ends up a few steps forward from where he started, but he has turned 180 degrees. So he basically tries to drift around you to get to your backside. The side he does the drift on is the side where the hitbox is. Again, he likes to attack forward, so if you see him raise an arm and growl, that's your cue to dodge and roll. The safest way to dodge is straight opposite 90 degrees from where he's looking. If you want to play it a little bit closer to the chest though, dodging about 45 degrees away from the raised arm and backwards is the best way. So in this example here, I'm slightly to the left of his head. I see his left arm raise up, so I know that I need to dodge backwards to my left. Dual Blades has a very swift dodge, so I'm ready to spin my mouse and prepare for what's next. Now if he's in blast mode, he'll drop bombs again behind him, so yet again another reason to roll to the opposite side. This move is very predictable in terms of where he will end. If you're already on the opposite side, blast bombs won't affect you and you can just turn around and be ready for whatever's coming next. Now be aware though, he does like to follow this attack up with another attack, either a blast or fire breath or an arm swipe. Usually if he's in blast mode, he'll do one of those extra moves to plant more blast bombs and then he'll ignite them all. So here, I dodged beautifully, but I was prepared for another attack, so I didn't jump into his head. This other example here though, I moved perfectly and I was right in the position to attack, so I was able to get some damage in before he swiped. So it's still a window for you to attack depending on his reaction and your positioning. So just keep an eye out for that. It's these small little openings that will get you enough damage to get him a knock. One final note that I will make here is that if you're in a bad spot, like right under the arm that he raises, you can actually roll towards him under that raised arm and you'll actually dodge the attack. This actually accounts for all of his attacks that do arm swipes as well. You can roll under that arm and most of the time you will actually not be hit. So that's most of his basic moves here. There are a couple of specific attacks to both fire and blast mode, so let's talk about those. If he's in blast mode, he does two particular hind leg attacks. The first is a smaller one where he'll basically pounce backwards, stand up on his hind legs, he'll growl for a second while releasing blast orbs in a straight line in front of him. And then as he comes down to the ground, he bites his teeth and blows the orbs. Very easy to dodge, and the second you see him on his hind legs, you just know to move left or right. Just get out of the straight way, don't be in front of his face, and you're clear. If you want to take advantage and get some damage, roll at a 45-degree angle to catch up to him while still moving to the side. You can reach that same sweet head spot, and again, you'll be safe there since the bombs blow up in front of him and not on his head. And then after that, he also does his head reset animation, so you have a whole bunch of time to attack. Now the second hind leg attack is actually a bigger Nova in front of him. He'll stand up and make a big circle of fire in front of him. Now while appearing big, it actually has a small narrow radius of damage, so as long as you dodge out of the circle before his hands touch the ground, you are safe. The best choice of movement for this attack is to get below him. The explosion is again in front of him, not on him, so if you can get close to him, you can do as much damage as you like on any body part that you need to. And again, after this attack, he does the animation reset, so you can attack his head yet again. Now that's about it for his blast attacks. Let's talk about his fire specific attacks before we finish this video off with his ultimate supernova. Now the first one is a ground fire breath. He'll get on his hind legs and blow fire right below him. Now this attack pretty much covers the entire area below, so it's a bit hard to damage when he does it. If you can get behind him, his tail is pretty open, but that's a little bit harder to do in solo mode. It's a little bit easier in multiplayer because if he targets a teammate, you can get behind him. The cue for this is literally just him getting on his hind legs. When he's in fire mode, he has no other attacks on his hind legs, so if you see him stand up, he's going to do ground fire breath attack. Now this attack isn't really ideal to counter. It has a multi-hit within the fire. If you have a shield, you could probably block it, but I would rather suggest that you just step away, let the fire die down, and then jump back into attack. You can also use this attack as a good time to reset, gain back stamina, pop a demon powder or dash juice if you need. The final fire specific mode is the flying fire breath. Now what you want to look out for is obviously him going into the air, but he doesn't fly far away like the other attack. He just kind of lifts up and flaps his wings twice in the same spot. This attack will always start from the right side, so unless you're far away on the right of him, dodging left is pretty ideal. Your goal is to get under him, and you're pretty safe under him. He doesn't damage you there, and his legs hang pretty low, so some weapons can actually get some damage in. This attack ends in two ways. Sometimes he'll just land right where he stops flying. Usually it's not when he's super enraged, but if he is enraged and he has brighter flames, he'll probably do the same mini dive attack that we previously mentioned. Just gotta fly out and come back on your position. Now the final attack that I want to talk about is Teostra's supernova attack. Now this is his ultimate attack, and he has both a blast and fire version, but mechanically they are the same. He jumps into the air and he absorbs all of his blast sparks, kind of like a spirit bomb from Dragon Ball Z, and then he explodes. It's not as big of a radius as previous games, so rolling back a few steps gets you to safety. This move is definitely counterable, but I'm not sure about all the weapons, so definitely give yours a try. In terms of timing, his charge lasts 3 seconds before it explodes, so time your counters appropriately. In previous games, you could also flash him to cancel his charging state and drop him to the ground. I haven't been able to do it myself in Rise, maybe I'm just too slow, so if you guys have done it, let me know in the comments below so we can all know. And that's about it for Teostra, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually a lot more straightforward once you see his patterns. He likes to mix and match a few attacks, so that's something that you'll need to be aware of. But once you start noticing when his attacks are incoming and which attacks are coming, it's very easy to dodge. So I hope this helped you guys out. As usual, please leave a like if any of this helped you, and let me know in the comments of what you thought or which monsters you'd like to see next in this series. I'll be making these videos straight until Sunbreak launches, and then we'll be covering the new monsters that come with that DLC as well. And that's about it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, stay safe, be happy, and keep hunting. Sky Sensei's out.